Hey, Mark, welcome to the program.
Hey, Tim, great to be here.
You know what? I have been wanting you on for a long time. You probably felt me stalking you over the years because I've always been aware of what you're doing, and I've always been a big fan of Smashwords. So appreciate you being on the program. Before we get started, give us a little background on you.
Well, before I got into this business, I was in the high technology PR business for over 20 years. I've been in tech from Silicon Valley, doing multiple different startups, helping other entrepreneurs get their startups going.
You know, I'm surprised at how many guys in this business are from a tech background, because I am. I owned a software company for 25 years, and Michael Anderle was a software guy, Andy Weir. What is it about technology that wrings us dry and makes us want to write books?
You know, I don't know. I think technologists are artists at heart. They're looking to create things. They're looking to change the world. They're looking to make the world a better place. That's certainly the vibe in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, everyone thinks that, the world's problems can be solved with technology. And sometimes that's true and sometimes not.
Technology and enough money will solve any problem.
Yeah.
Well, you are the founder of Smashwords, and I definitely want to get into that. But before I do, and I know you've told this story 1,000 times, but it's such a great story. Talk about how Smashwords came about, and it all started with your efforts to get your book published, right?
Right. My wife-to-be, when I met her, she's a former reporter for Soap Opera Weekly magazine. She was telling me about what it was like interviewing the soap opera actors in Hollywood and how they were more over-the-top crazy in real life than they were in front of the camera. I suggested that she should write a book about it. She suggested that we write that book together. So at the time, I was running a PR agency in Silicon Valley, and I was burnt out on PR, and I thought, I've always dreamed of writing a book. I never thought it would be a novel about soap operas, but that's what we did. And we moved to Burbank for about 4 months, interviewed about 50 insiders, collected all their dirt. Then we moved to a cabin in Vermont, which is where I'm coming to you from today. Nestled here in the woods, can't see another house anywhere. And we wrote our novel. And then after multiple revisions and editing rounds and working with book doctors and editors, we shopped it around to agents. We were lucky enough to get represented by Distel and Goderich in New York City. They're an awesome agency. We had an awesome agent. He loved the project. He believed in us. For 2 years, he shopped it around to all the major publishers of commercial women's fiction. And for 2 years, we got nothing but rejection.
And why do you think that is?
Well, previous soap opera themed novels hadn't performed well in the marketplace, so the publishers were reluctant to take a chance on a project that they didn't think had a large enough audience. So, as you might imagine, it was a devastating experience. The sole extent of our dream was to see our book on the shelf at Barnes & Noble, which is where we went for date night every Friday night. And to have the publishers just slam the door in our faces, it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the publishing industry was broken. Publishers are well-intentioned. I love publishers. I still love traditional publishers to this day, but they're like venture capitalists. They're in the business of making investments on books that they think are going to become hits that they can sell a lot of. That's how they keep their lights on.
Yeah.
And they're valuing books based on perceived commercial merit. And I think books are more valuable than just money alone. You can't measure the worth to humanity, to culture, just on dollar sales. And so I thought, this is a problem that can be solved with technology. I recognized that publishers are unable, unwilling, and disinterested to take a risk on every author. They simply can't say yes to every author. Then I thought, well, what if someone out there could say yes to every author? What if there was someone that could take a chance on every single writer in the world and publish them for free? And so that was the genesis of Smashwords. And I realized that print book publishing was really expensive, but what about ebooks? What about digital books? And so this was back in 2005 when I first started thinking about this. And back in 2005, ebooks accounted for about 1/4 of 1% of the overall book market. But I looked at the data and I could see that the market was growing slowly. It was going from 0.5% to 0.75%. Still off everyone's radar, but I saw potential there, and I saw the ability to, potentially create an online publishing platform that would allow anyone to publish for free. And that's what we launched in 2008 with Smashwords. So Smashwords is a free ebook publishing platform. Now, in the early days of Smashwords, there were never any plans to become an ebook distributor. The plan was that we would make ebook publishing free. You would upload your book, it would go for sale in our store, you would control all the rights, you would control the pricing, the customers would decide if your book was worth reading, and we'd sell it through our little store that no one had ever heard of before. And then it was the following year, 2009, that I got this epiphany, and call me a little bit slow, but I realized that readers go to bookstores to buy books. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could get our self-published authors into the major ebook stores like Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Sony. And so we signed deals. We opened up Barnes & Noble and Sony to self-published ebooks. Previously, self-published authors couldn't get into those stores. And that changed everything for us. The book started selling in 2010. We were among the first to open up the iBook store. So we've been an authorized global aggregator for them since the beginning. And in the last few years, we've opened up a bunch of libraries as well. So that's kind of the background in a nutshell.
The one thing that I've always found interesting about your story is you wrote this book, you got an agent, which most people can't do. And then I was in the same situation with me. It was shopped around and nobody ever bought it. And I can't tell you how many authors I've talked to who had that happen. They were just devastated because they thought the moment they got an agent, they were the next John Grisham. And it really doesn't work that way, does it? It's a whole process that you have to go step by step, and there's kind of rejection at every step, isn't there?
There's a lot of rejection along the way. We were definitely fortunate to get this agent. The agents are looking for projects they think they can sell, that publishers want to buy. But publishers are rejecting most of what they see. I think it was unusual that our agency couldn't sell our book. They're known for representing New York Times bestsellers. They did Barack Obama's first book. But I think it was really more of a testament to how the publishing industry viewed the soap opera genre and soap opera fans. Maybe they didn't think soap opera fans read books. I don't know, but whatever the bias or prejudice was there, they didn't see a market, and they have a right to decide what they're going to invest in. So I respect that.
Yeah, I think the comparison you make to venture capitalists is dead on, because they invest in 10 and they look for one winner. And if you're that winner, hey, super duper. If not, you're the majority of the pack. That book was the Boob Tube?
Boob Tube, yes.
I love that title. I love that. Did you go on and publish that book yourself?
Yeah, it was the third book published at Smashwords.
What was the first one?
I don't remember the other two. It was the third book published during our beta testing period, and our beta testers got their books up before I got my own book up.
Isn't that something? That's usually the way it is when you're running the show. So to make a long story short, you really got into this business early on, 2005 to 2008, back when a lot of folks didn't even know what ebooks were. And do you remember a time when people didn't want to spend money on ebooks because they couldn't hold it in their hand?
Oh, yeah. Well, around 98, 99, 2000, there was a lot of buzz and hype around ebooks. And a lot of people coming out saying, look, ebooks are going to replace print books. They're the next great thing. And they totally bombed. Yeah. And after that bombing, pre-2000, I think people just wrote them off. Yeah. And so, if you think about it, it was pretty crazy for me to even start this idea when I did, because we were going to start a business selling books in a format that no one wanted to buy, publishing authors that no one wanted to publish at a store no one wanted to go to or had ever heard of, and catering to authors who didn't want to self-publish. 10 years ago, self-publishing carried enormous stigma. It was
Yeah.
the option of last resort. It was the option for failed writers. And the writing community was absolutely vicious to any writer who dared self-publish.
Yeah.
Completely different world than it is today.
You remember the term vanity press? I mean,
Yeah.
that in itself was negative. You're so vain that you're going to self-publish a book. How dare you?
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is there's nothing more vain than publishing.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
how dare any of us think that millions of readers should be reading our books?
Well, I think it's funny how quickly well, not really quickly, it's been a decade or so, but so basically what you did with Smashwords is you created a platform where authors could get their books out there, get them easily published, and actually get them into other ebook stores. So Smashword, would you call it an aggregate service? Is it a digital publisher? How do you define it now?
We're an ebook publishing platform from the perspective that we make it fast, free, and easy to publish an ebook. But when I talk about our business, I really think of us as a distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So we are distributing to the retailers. The retailers are the sellers of the books. But we are a little bit unusual among distributors in that we also still operate our own little store. Mm-hmm. And that little store has grown, and it's one of our largest retailers that we're serving.
It's always nice when you can sell your own stuff.
Well, it's nice for the authors because a lot of our authors are making up to 80% list on 99-cent ebooks.
Yeah.
It's all based on the size of the customer shopping cart.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the growth of Smashwords, because you've been around now going on a decade. Where are you as far as the number of authors on the platform, the number of books? I know you're a tech guy and you've got those stats bouncing around your head at any given time, right?
Well, you know, in my old age, some of those stats leak out.
With you.
We're working with 130,000 authors and publishers around the world, mostly in the English language, but publishing all other languages. About 475,000 books live on the platform right now.
That's incredible. Do you log in some days and just go, wow, at what you've been able to do? I mean, that's a great volume there, Mark.
Well, you know, anytime I really sit back and think about what Smashwords has become, I've got to pinch myself because it really surpassed my wildest dreams. Every single day when I look at our homepage and I look at, you know, another 200, 300 books in the service, I think, wow, you know, I'm just touched that these authors know about us, that they trust us, that they're working with us. I'm really proud of the authors that have been with us since the beginning. Really proud of the authors that you know, believed in themselves and believed in us in the very beginning, and now they're New York Times bestsellers and they still work with us. So, you know, that's really gratifying.
Yeah, it has to be.
A lot of fun.
And I would assume out of all of those authors, a lot of them are just people who, you know, everybody wants to sell books. Everybody wants to sell a lot of books. The hard truth is most of us do not. But it's just gratifying to be able to have a platform to just get it out there, just to get it in the ether.
You know, that is so true. That the publishing industry, they'll look at a book that doesn't sell as a failure. They'll look at that author as a failed author. Right. Yeah. But you talk to authors and you quickly realize that writers write for reasons that are different than publishers publish.
Yeah.
Right. Publishers, they see a book as something they need to sell. And yeah, they love books too, but writers are writing for different reasons. And yes, writers would love to reach a lot of readers and make a lot of money, but there is a joy and satisfaction that comes from the creative process of writing and from the creative process of publishing, and a joy that comes that very first time you get your first review, your first fan email, you know, the devastation of your first one-star review. Yeah. I mean, it all goes together.
Well, why doesn't this person love me? I can remember that first bad review. I'm like, how can I find this person's address?
Yeah. You wonder, why are these people being so mean?
Exactly. And I love that. So basically it is an aggregate service, a distributor of these books. Talk about it from a royalty standpoint. If I'm an author, is there a cost to use Smashwords? What is the royalty setup? What's the dollars side of things?
There's no cost. When I was first working on the business plan with Smashwords, I decided early on that we were going to adopt some of the best practices of the best professional publishers. And that's that the money always flows to the author, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. So we don't sell anything. We don't sell publishing services. We don't sell marketing packages. We don't charge setup fees. We only make money if the author makes money. And we earn money on commission. The commission is 10% of the retail price for books that we sell through our distribution channels, and 15% of the net for what we sell through our own store.
Yeah, this is one of the comments. I actually have done a video on Smashwords, and one of my observations is compared to like the 800-pound gorilla Kindle, Smashwords seems much more concerned about the goodwill of the author and the benefit of the author, where Amazon, you've heard these complaints, and I'm a guy that makes those complaints. Amazon seems to go out of their way to make things difficult for us little guys, where Smashwords, on the other hand, it's like you look out for us, and we appreciate that. Mark, we need someone to be in our corner, because on some of these platforms, they just aren't, right?
Well, look, yeah, we've had this fighting spirit from day one of Smashwords. We're always fighting to advocate for writers. Mm-hmm. I believe, and I've always believed, that every writer in the world has a right to publish. Doesn't mean they have a right to be read, but they have a right to have a chance to publish and a right to be judged by their readers. All we do here is serve authors. Amazon, it's a brilliant company. I have enormous respect for it, but I've been a critic of them, especially regarding their exclusivity policies, mm-hmm. and their publishing strategy, which is all around exclusivity. I think it's anti-competitive. I think it's toxic to the future of all authors, and I think a lot of authors don't realize what they're getting into there. Well,
they don't, and I think that the way that. And I don't want to make this all about Amazon or bad-mouthing Amazon. I've got lots of those videos, Mark. But it does seem to be that they dangle this very tiny carrot in front of the new author's eyes, and they become exclusive, and they think that's going to be a big deal, when really I have seen in my own experience the exclusivity deals are not nearly as valuable as Kindle purports them to be. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the author's ability to sell books, don't you think? No matter what platform they're on?
Yeah, no matter what platform they're on, it's about the author's ability to sell books. And even if the worst case scenario happens and every retailer goes out of business except for Amazon, there still will be an enormous opportunity for authors to reach readers around the world. And it's going to come down to the author's ability to write super awesome books that can touch readers at a really deep emotional level. They need to be super awesome wow books, because good books aren't good enough anymore. The author needs to learn to run their business like a business. They need to learn to think like a business person. And these are a lot of really important skills that authors need to learn. And most authors are not born with these skills. Most authors are experts in whatever career profession that they worked in prior to becoming an author. And so there's a lot for authors to learn.
Yeah, you just hit like my next 10 questions right there. Okay. So let's back up. So the thing, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you are in, I think, a unique position to really observe a lot that's going on as far as the indie publishing and that sort of thing. And this is a conversation I have with a lot of people, is which is more important, the talent or the marketing? Hard question, right?
Well, it's a difficult question. I would say talent really comes first, because you could have $1 million marketing budget, but if you have a crappy book that doesn't please the reader, you might sell $500,000 worth of books. You just lost $500,000 there. Yeah. And so it really starts with a great book, and I think it's really, the book is the most important thing. It's all about, how is your book going to touch that reader? Does one reader become 2 readers, become 4 readers through word of mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a book that's going to make them go, wow? Is this a book that the reader's going to want to wear on their sleeve as an extension of their self-identity of who they are? Is this a book that they're just going to say, oh, it was a good book? Or is it a book where they're going to go to their friends and family, grab them by the neck and say, you need to read this book. It's going to change your life. And so it's a really high bar to achieve. And most of us can't achieve that bar, that bar where you're only getting 5-star reviews, the bar where every single review is, wow, I couldn't put the book down. I stayed up all night. That's what every author needs to aim for. The marketing side of the thing of this. And again, my background is marketing. Mm-hmm. I see marketing as a catalyst. Marketing is going to help you achieve your book's full potential. If you have a super awesome book, but you can't even do the basics of marketing, like getting your book into stores, mm-hmm. distribution is a mm-hmm. basic of marketing. If you can't do some of those basics, if you don't have the sense to give it a professionally designed cover, then you're not going to reach the readers. Readers aren't going to want to take a chance on you. So if you do the marketing right, it's going to make it possible. It's going to make your book desirable to readers so that they'll take a chance. And then once they take a chance, then then they're going to respond to it, and you can grow on the wings of reader word of mouth.
So talent is important, but also the ability to market that talent is equally important, if not more so in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is important to have talent as a writer, because I think talent wins out in the end. It may not win out monetarily, but if you want to establish yourself as a good writer, you've got to be able to write. But then again, we go back to the marketing side of things. And one of the things, Mark, that I hear a lot from authors is, I don't want to do the business side of things. I just want to write. And, those things you don't do that anymore. If you're going to write books, you've got to have the ability to either market them yourselves or hire someone to do it. So talk about the business side of writing, because you mentioned this a few minutes ago. The book is your product, but this is a business, right?
This is a business. And even if you're working with a traditional publisher, you still need to learn how to do these things. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that you can learn to think like a marketer, to think like a business person, to the extent that you can start developing your own personal platform, even if you're working with a traditional publisher, taking advantage of all the services that they're offering you, you will be more successful in traditional publishing if you develop these skill sets on your own.
And you have to do that, even if you are, I know New York Times bestselling authors who have sold millions of books, but you know what? I still get email from them wanting to be interviewed. And I'm like, you want me to interview you? You must, why? But the thing about it is,
because you're awesome.
Well, oh, stop. I know. Yeah. But the thing about it is it's changed so much. For example, Jack Engelhardt is a friend of mine. Jack wrote Indecent Proposal. Remember that book? Yeah. A movie with Demi Moore. And Jack and we talk, and Jack is probably in his 70s, very much from the old school where you would just write the book, ship it off, and go smoke a cigarette. And all of this new stuff really just gets on Jack's nerves. He's like, I don't know the internet. I don't know blogs. I don't know Facebook. So, but the bottom line is it's a skill that you have to learn if you hope to sell books, and you mentioned building a platform, which I think is so important now. It's not just about the writing, but it is an entire platform, right?
It's an entire platform. And, you talk about the skills that were necessary to become a bestseller 10, 20, 30 years ago, mm-hmm. and the skills that are necessary to become and sustain that kind of career today. It's completely different. Mm-hmm. And ebooks make it different. In the old world of publishing, when publishers controlled the access to retail shelves, there was artificial scarcity of books. There were only maybe 300,000 books a year being published. Mm-hmm. And most of those books went out of print the same year. They were forced off of the retailer's shelves to make room for the next batch of books. Now we're facing an era of abundance. And thanks to ebooks, mm-hmm. the virtual shelf space is unlimited and it's cheap. And even if you don't sell a single copy in a year, the retailer is not going to take your book off the shelf. So because ebooks are immortal, it means that every single day from this day forward, you're facing more competition. So we're facing this situation where the supply of books is exceeding the growth in demand.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's one of the things that the nice thing about publishing now is anyone can do it. The bad thing about publishing is anyone can do it, right?
Yeah.
Because it just the pool just keeps getting more full and more full and more full. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've learned just over the years in the position there, because you must see a lot of trends. You must see a lot of things that make you scratch your head. Talk a little bit about that. How have things changed, and where do you think things are heading since you started Smashwords?
Well, every year I do something called the Smashwords survey, and I publish it at the Smashwords blog. And for the survey, what we do is we analyze aggregated sales data from across our retailer network, and we ask questions of the data, like at what price points are authors selling the most units? At which price points are authors earning the most income? And depending on the author's objective, whether it's to build platform fast or to build income or to do both at the same time, what are the right price points for that? And then we ask questions of the data to determine what is it that the best-selling authors are doing that the worst-selling authors are not. And so it's all about identifying best practices. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And so although the industry has changed dramatically over the last 10 years, there are these core foundational best practices that have not changed. These evergreen best practices that a lot of authors lose sight of, and most authors don't take advantage of. Mm-hmm. For example, pre-orders. The last couple of years, we've been looking at the percentage of authors who are doing pre-orders. During the most recent 2017 Smashwords survey, for a 12-month period of time, only 12.3% of our authors released their books as pre-orders. Yet that 12.3% of authors accounted for the majority of the sales of new titles. When we looked at specific genres, like in romance, one of the most popular categories, 25% of their titles were released as pre-orders. So their pre-order adoption rate is twice the average. That 25% of romance pre-orders accounted for almost 75% of that category's sales for all new releases during that year. And we've got a ton of data on this, and I share it in the podcast. There's a special episode releasing tomorrow on pre-orders. This is an essential best practice that over 85% of indie authors aren't even doing. Those authors are leaving money on the table. They're leaving readers on the table. The authors that are adopting these best practices are vacuuming up all the sales. And, pre-orders have been around for years. We've been doing them for 4 or 5 years. So there's definitely a big education hurdle that we all need to play our part in helping to overcome.
Right.
So that authors can take advantage of these things, because if they don't take advantage of these best practices, they're squandering their potential. Even if they have a super awesome book, these are some of these smart business things that you need to be doing.
The old entrepreneur in me is going, why isn't he packaging that and selling that information for millions of dollars? But you're putting it out there for free for authors to peruse. And why do you think authors are not doing that? Do you think they're just ignoring those statistics, or they just, they caught up in other minutia? What's wrong with these folks?
Well, I can speculate. There's an educational curve that everyone needs to overcome to first learn what are pre-orders, how do they operate, how do you publish your book as a pre-order. To do your book as a pre-order, it requires some foresight, some planning. A lot of authors, when their book is finally ready for publication, they want to get it up now. Or they're not working at a calendar. I look at our most successful indie authors that are working with us. They're professional publishers. They have a publishing calendar going out 12, 18 months. They know what they're working on when. They know when their delivery dates, their publication dates are going to be. They're establishing pre-orders up to 12 months in advance. they're putting their stake in the ground. They're making a commitment to their readers. I'm going to deliver this book to you on this time frame.
Right.
And by doing that, they're reaping the advantages. I think another reason that pre-order adoption rates are low is because pre-orders work differently at Amazon than they do at some of the other large retailers. Like at Apple iBooks, all of those orders that you accumulate during the pre-order period credit toward your first day's sales. This is how a lot of indie authors are hitting #1 on their store-wide bestseller list there. And when you hit #1, it's a life-changing experience. Because let's say you're selling 5 books a day at iBooks, you're not going to hit any bestseller list.
Right.
But if you can accumulate 5 orders a day for 12 months, you're going to go out the door with thousands of sales on that first day. You're going to hit the list. But at Amazon, all of the pre-orders cannibalize your first day's sales rank. So a lot of authors believe that pre-orders don't work because they don't work as well as at Amazon, and so they don't do them at the other retailers. I think that's probably a pretty significant reason. But as I talk about in the episode on pre-orders, I think it still makes sense to do a pre-order at Amazon. Because there are a lot of other advantages to pre-orders that you get at Amazon, like still the ability to market your book more effectively in advance.
Have you thought about starting a Smashwords University to teach all these hard-headed authors what the hell they need to do to sell some books on Smashwords?
Well, I've thought about launching a podcast.
That kind of leads us into the next topic.
I was thinking we might call it Smart Author, and I was thinking we might release it tomorrow.
Let's, well, you know what? Hypothetically, let's pretend that you've done that. And no, you are starting a podcast to get this information out. Let's talk a little bit about that. It starts, this is probably going to air on the 27th, which I think is the same day the podcast comes out. So since you have already pulled the cork out of the bottle, tell us about the podcast.
Well, you asked, why don't we do a university? Over the last 10 years, I've spoken at probably hundreds of conferences around the world, and I love doing workshops that teach best practices. And we always get really great feedback on our presentations because they're not sales pitches. It's all about best practices. Even if you're not working with Smashwords, you can take what we teach you and you'll do better at Amazon with what we teach you. And it dawned on me the last few years that despite all this public speaking I've done, maybe I've only spoken before, 3,000 people. But there are hundreds of thousands of authors that need to learn this essential information. And so that's why I started thinking about the podcast. Maybe it could make it possible for us to get this essential best practices information out to a broader audience and make it accessible to everybody, because not all authors can afford to fly to a conference or to pay the $800 fee to get into the conference. So we're all about making this, professional best practices information as free and accessible as possible. That's what we're doing with the podcast. I'm looking at it as a masterclass in ebook publishing. So it's not going to be an ongoing podcast that goes, into hundreds of episodes. Maybe it'll be a couple dozen episodes tops. I'm focusing on the evergreen foundational best practices. This is the stuff that you need to have under your belt no matter what you do. This is the knowledge that's going to make all the other great podcasts out there and all the other shows out there like yours help authors get more out of them. One of the problems I've seen at so many of these writers' conferences is that a lot of these expert speakers presenting great information are talking right over the heads of authors because they don't have that foundational stuff. And this foundational stuff I'm talking about, it's not just stuff for beginners and it's not for novices. It's for everyone. It's for experts too. And the necessary foundation that professional authors need today it is much more robust than it had to be 10 years ago. Right. And so that's what we're going to focus on. So we're going to focus on, actionable ideas and information that you can put to use today. What I'm talking about what I share in the podcast is going to be just as useful to you 10 years from now as it's going to be today. So this is the evergreen, no nonsense best practices that you need to focus on.
Is that the name of the podcast? The Evergreen No Nonsense Best Practices You Need to Focus on podcast?
That long mouthful.
Put that on a business card, Mark, and send it to me. No,
it's called Smart Author.
All right, very good. And tell us again, what is it's going to air tomorrow. Of course, we'll put links down below and I'll email out. What is episode number 1 about?
So episode 1 explores 7 trends driving the future of authorship.
Awesome.
So it's going to be a great refresher for people who've already been in the business, and for people who are new to the business of publishing, it's going to help them understand the past of publishing, the present of publishing, and the future of publishing. So that's essential foundational information so that you can start, getting more from everything else. And then the second episode is an introduction to ebook publishing. So it goes over the basics. So we're going to describe what copyright is, what an ISBN is, because you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be, the amount of misinformation out there from so-called experts on these topics. And so I'm going to just break it down and simplify it so that authors can start making smart decisions. And then the third episode is we'll explore the bestseller secrets. So I'll identify 16 best practices of the best-selling indie authors.
You know what I should do is just every week just do a video of me listening to your podcast.
Well, I don't know it's going to be that exciting.
Okay, let me tell you, not all of these shows are exciting as this. Let me tell you.
But the first 8 episodes are already recorded. They're in the can, and they're going to be releasing 4 episodes tomorrow, and then 1 episode a week through the end of November, and then we've got more planned for December. But in 5 hours, I think we've got 5 hours of material recorded right now. In just 5 hours, I think I can take anyone from beginner to expert, and I think I can take experts and make them smarter.
Well, I'm going to listen, and I'm about the smartest guy I know. Of course, my social circle is very small, Mark.
Well, this is great. So I'm going to have at least 1 listener.
1. I've already subscribed. So what's on the horizon for Smashwords? More of the same? Anything new coming besides the podcast?
Well, we're doing stuff at Smashwords every single week. We're always innovating. We're always asking ourselves, what can we do for our authors that's going to help them sell more books and reach more readers? So we've done some really cool tools just over the last 18 months. About a month and a half ago, we announced global pricing control. So you can now set the price of your book in about 200 different countries and about 120 different currencies. It's crazy. Wow. So if you want to, like, for example, in the Eurozone, most services out there will just say, okay, you can only set €1 price for the different countries. Well, the GDP for Spain and Italy is almost half of what it is in Germany. So now you can price to the market. Mm-hmm. If you want to price your book lower in Spain or Italy, you can, and higher in Germany. So it's a really cool tool. It gives authors more control. We're always all about giving the authors more control over their publishing.
Yeah, it's one of the things. And I knew you were a tech guy by the amount of documentation on your website. Yeah, my friend Dale Robertson and I, we both love Smashwords, and Dale's like, man, their FAQ, there's so much there. And I'm like, yeah, they smash you with FAQs. And I told him, I said, that's a tech guy writing all of that stuff right there.
I watched your episode, and I was listening to you, and I was nodding my head and agreeing.
Well, you go over to Amazon and there's like 3 steps, and then you pray. But at least with Smashwords, you guys are. And again, I've written so many technical manuals I can't tell you, but it's great to have that information because, hey, the more you know, the more books you will hopefully sell, right?
That's true. But, you hit on a valid point. We need to make the information more accessible to people. I know it's overwhelming for people to look at the Smashwords style guide and see how long it is, but it's got a lot of pictures in it.
Right.
The people who actually read it give it 5-star reviews. People who read it. The people who hate it are the people that don't read it.
Yep. Well, I believe it or not, I actually read it, and I'm with you. I get those people all the time that ask me questions that if they would just go do a Google search or turn around, there's the answer. But it's more, it's easier to ask someone else. So, hey, Mark, this has been a lot of fun, man. We got to do some more stuff together. I've still got a page full of questions, but we're already clicking about 45 minutes here. So, so for folks interested in the podcast, we will put the link below. That will release tomorrow, and it is on iTunes and other platforms.
Yes, it's everywhere.
All right. And Smashwords is going to continue doing all the good work it's done. Hey, man, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you and everything you're doing for old authors like me. Like I said, it's nice to have somebody looking out for us for a change.
Well, thanks, Tim. As long as the authors keep looking out for us, we'll keep looking out for them.
There you go.
As long as we can.
There's your new motto right there.
We're all in it together.
All right, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Tim. It's been great.